So I say hi again. Hi, Stephen Pende. Stefan, of course, isn't it? Like it's in
Yes,
German. Yeah.
yes.
So it's hi, Stefan
Mm.
Pende. I'm very pleased to meet you over Zoom. And I'm a journalist in Sweden, and I'm looking forward to this short conversation we will have. What I have read on your homepage, you say that we've got a lot of powers, self-healing powers in our personality. So what do you mean with the personality and the self-healing powers?
Mm. So in my experience and in the work with my clients, what I find is when you give a loving space to yourself or the person you're talking with, there's something happening. Wisdom arises, or healing is happening just by giving space through the way you share your presence. And in the Buddhist approach, we talk about Buddha nature, like that there is an aspect or a dimension of our being which is already whole, which is already complete, and which is covered up by our conditioning, by our traumas, by our wounds. And the experience is when we connect, we make contact through our own practice, but also particular through relationship with that aspect of our being, that healing happens, balance happens. And in that balance, traumas can resolve. So the health, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's part of the personality, because the personality belongs to the conditioned level of our being. So it is like a deeper dimension, a source of healing, spacious love.
So what would be the opposite of giving ourselves this space?
The opposite is what we usually do, is judging ourselves, struggling with how we feel, being dissatisfied with our conditioning, with our habits, being opposed to our personality.
I see. I can feel that it's contracting when you say that. The dissatisfaction and the struggling sort of keeps me more locked up in a way.
Yeah,
So is it?
it's one of the really fundamental insights in the Buddhist teachings, that we suffer because we resist the present moment. We resist our thoughts, our feelings, we resist what is happening, and that creates struggle, that creates suffering. So as soon as through our own practice or in a dialogue where we invite it to relax into present moment experience, something opens up, something which we didn't know was possible.
And we've learned in Sweden that we should resist our thoughts. So what is the healing way of not resisting our thoughts?
I guess that project of trying to control thoughts or resisting thoughts doesn't work. It just increases a sense of struggle, a sense of dissatisfaction. And so in the meditative tradition of Buddhism, we learn to neither engage in thoughts, not suppressing them, and seeing the insubstantial nature one's thoughts are seen as something which doesn't have any substance, which comes and goes, we can kind of make a step backward and let thoughts come and go without listening to the content and finding them as something insubstantial.
So is that the same sort of same sort of way to go with the feelings?
It's basically the same. Also, feelings, they seem to be more real, it seems that they have more reality to them. But it's the same approach. Finding a place of loving witnessing feelings and thoughts. And when I talk about feelings, then I mean mainly the felt sense of feelings in the body. So feelings are always a mixture of the conceptual level, the stories, but then there's also the felt sense or the energy in the body. And the approach in meditation would be the same, being a loving witness to that and giving space to them so that they can come and go. So as soon as we make a bit of a step into loving witnessing what is happening, then the suffering, the struggle decreases immediately.
And that would be one of the healing powers, to reduce the struggling.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And feelings are a very complicated field. I think we suffer from feelings if we have anxiety or if we're angry or depressed. It's really horrible. So how could people listen to a message about letting them in or sort of being with them when they're so horrible to feel?
One of the first helpful questions when one is in an experience of difficult feelings is, where do I feel it in the body? And to become curious about that. And to approach the feeling not as an enemy, but as an energy. And in the Buddhist view, it is said that feelings, they have a wisdom aspect. They have something to tell us. So we don't make feelings our enemy, but we can transform them into an ally. So it's a bit of a cognitive reframing from, oh, anxiety is only bad, or anger is only bad, to, oh, that is an energy, and it has a reason to be here in this moment. And what does it have to say? And the movement towards the felt sense in the body releases the occupation with the thinking. And one experience an emotion then as an energy, maybe slightly unpleasant initially, but one can be with it. It's through meditation practice, you slowly start to learn that you are capable to feel all feelings, that they are not dangerous, that they are not poisoning you. They are just an energy. And when you give them some space, maybe even some curiosity, of course, that's not easy for example, with anxiety. But trying to be an explorer of the human condition, also including the so-called difficult feelings. And then one starts to discover oneself that that the feeling is not dangerous. It's not poisoning. It comes and goes.
And when you talk about that we do have some kind of self-destructive behavior as modern persons, modern human beings, what is the most common self-destructive behavior you can see when you meet people of our time?
Yeah, I think that's what Tara Brach calls the trance of unworthiness. And I've been using other words for that, the inner critic, judgment. So it is that part of us which we have developed in our psychological history, because maybe we took it over from our parents or from our peers or somewhere in our life. And there is a part of us which is criticizing, judging us, telling us we are not good enough. And I see that that is a kind of a very spread, it's almost like a mental sickness, which, because I was trained in the Tibetan tradition, which the Tibetan teachers, when they started to come to the West, they couldn't understand that. They didn't understand how people can hate themselves, because from their view, everyone has Buddha nature, has an innate goodness, what we just talked about, that kind of self-healing, spacious capacity to love, which is inborn, which is innate. Every baby is born with that capacity to love and to be loved. So through different religious, philosophical, psychological conditioning, somehow we have this kind of often very nasty and very harsh voice in us, or that part of us, which makes our life really difficult. That's one of the most important, I think, discoveries in meditation practice, to become aware of that part. And what you become aware of starts to lose its power. And I mean, I've been working with this for, I don't know, 20 years, and it's still there. So
yourself.
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah, but yeah, I got to know that part of me, and I don't listen to it, or I'm not so, I don't believe it.
It might be a little off, but both Tara Brach, whom I've met, and Christopher Germer, whom I interviewed, and I've interviewed both, they sort of see that in our time, the trance of unworthiness is from Tara Brach, and then Christopher Germer says that it's more common that we don't love ourselves in our time. That is something very spread and very emphasized in our time. Do you agree that it's something for the Western time now? Increasing?
Absolutely. I hardly meet. I mean, I'm meeting people not only from Europe, so United States, South America. I have not seen it in Tibetans. I have been around Tibetans because they come from that culture where the assumption is that there's a goodness in all of us. Yeah, I think it's pretty much spread in the Western world. Yeah, and sometimes I meet people who doesn't seem to suffer from it so much. And initially I was a bit suspicious, but yeah, there is people who grew up in a very loving environment, and so it's not 100%, but I think it's very spread. Yes.
Mm. It's also very spread nowadays to be aware of the body. So why is it important that you teach people to be aware of the body? No, to know their bodies. I think we're so much aware of it in every aspect. And still this is one of your big paths to something with the healing process is so much connected to the body. How come this is in the same time of the occupation of how we look and how we eat, and about the body in our time?
Yeah, I think it's so important because in our culture we tend to live in the head, so to say. We live in stories. We live in our thoughts. So that's where we spend our time. And that leads to a disconnection with what is happening in our body. I don't know. I don't have like really good rational reasons. It just feels right to include that dimension into our being. And when I teach people, I actually don't. Most of them, they don't need any kind of reasons for, like, I don't need to explain why. It just instinctively makes sense to people to return to the sensations in the body. Yeah.
And there is some power in returning to this. Also, we both disconnect from the body, and at the same time, we are very occupied about how we look, or how what we weigh and things. So this can happen at the same time.
When I say returning to the body, I'm not talking about in the sense of fitness. I'm not even talking about like only physical sensation. I'm talking about how feelings express themselves in the body. So, and that's in focusing based on the work on Genlin, that's called felt sense. So the felt sense in the body of emotions, which is it's deeper than just physical sensation. There is some subtlety to it.
So if I give you an example, I was occupied by a thought about feeling outside, and I was trying to confirm that was really the thing. It was really the thing that I was outside. I was excluded.
Yeah.
And then I was aware of, now I'm going into these thoughts that make this spiral down in some very bad feelings. So I said, stop. And I listened to my body, and my thought and my answer was, well, it's hard to feel outside. And in that moment, I realized that the sky was blue and the fields were yellow. So I had been in a tunnel, and it's a very, very simple example, but it is something like that. I just sort of went inside, nothing more.
Yeah. So if you,
and I asked the body, where is the feeling?
Yeah. So if this would be a dialogue with me, so you would bring this as a topic, then then I would exactly do that, what you just described. I would ask you, so where do you feel that in the body being excluded? And then I would ask question which increases the curiosity. I would ask, does it have a shape? Does it have a color? What's the sensation like? Can you describe it to me? Where is it in the body? And that would happen in a loving atmosphere, in a trusting atmosphere. And then I would ask, maybe, do you know this feeling? And then maybe memories would come up of, feeling excluded in school, feeling excluded in your family. And so then one would also start to understand the feeling in connection with one's psychological history, which then can increase the compassion. So you develop a compassion. Well, I'm feeling like this in the situation because there's still this little girl in me which feels excluded. So let's take care of that. Yeah? And then let's take care of that, not in the sense of trying to figure it out conceptually, which you might also want to do in a more psychotherapeutical work. But here the approach is more, if you take care of the felt sense in the body, of the trauma in the body, through breathing with it, allowing it to be, starting a dialogue with it, that then some change can happen, something opens up through that, without even going through a conceptual understanding and discussion about it, which I think many psychotherapists have recognized has its limits. Just the cognitive understanding and the cognitive reframing sometimes doesn't really change that feeling in the body. So and I think both can be important in some healing work. The conceptual part, but also including how it sits in the body, where it is in the body. It's kind of stored as an energy in the body.
And this is possible to do also when it's more traumatic and also have a more traumatic background than what I described, which this was a more simple example.
Yes, but one has to be careful there. So then I would rather recommend to do this together with the person, so that the loving awareness is bigger through the presence of the therapist. And to do it slowly, not as far as one can go, so that it doesn't lead to another overwhelm. That is sometimes a problem. It's rare, but it happens in meditation retreats, where the instruction is go back into the body, breathe with it, allow it to be, and then for that person sitting alone in silence, it becomes too much. Mm-hmm. But the process is the same. It's just maybe step by step and with the support of another person. Otherwise, what can happen is what is called a re-traumatization. So, because in order for the healing to happen, one needs to have the capacity to be present to what is without being overwhelmed by it. And that's something we cultivate in meditation, that capacity. To be with the content of your experience in a way that it doesn't overwhelm you, in a way that you are kind of settling into the loving space, and you are still able to have you could say, a bit of a distance to the content of your experience.
And you talk about the loving space, which is very important in this work, isn't it? To sort of feel that, I mean, and that is very powerful, isn't it? To sort of allow the loving space to be there.
It is, yes. I mean, that's the ultimate medicine in the Tibetan tradition. And it takes often a long time for people to discover that capacity in themselves. In the Tibetan tradition, we have the assumption that we all have that capacity innately, but it might take quite some time for people to get to know how it feels to be really loved, because they haven't had that experience. So there again, the relationship to a coach or a therapist can play a role. In the Tibetan tradition, maybe it would be the relationship to one's teacher, or there are certain practices where you invoke the presence of unconditioned love through the archetypes of certain Buddha figures like Tara or the Buddha of compassion. So you use symbols, temporary, for getting a sense, a felt sense of how it feels to be really looked at with a loving gaze. For some people, initially, that's not available for them. They don't know how it feels because they haven't experienced it.
And the healing power, would you say the body is one of the very important tools, or whatever you can say, to reach that kind of loving space, so I mean, the body work is so important instead of the theory, the mind, or
yes,
or the feeling. So could you say something about the importance of the body, the work with the body?
In our view, we might have a sense that thoughts, that they are happening just in the brain. But from a Tibetan point of view, every feeling, every thought is a function of the subtle energy body. Maybe one can, from a Western point of view, now they discover the guts, the importance of the guts in our emotional states and in our thoughts. So in order to connect with what is called Buddha nature, with the innate capacity of loving awareness, we need to connect with the whole body.
Also, meditation can lead us in this direction. That would be interesting to hear who you would explain that. The training in meditation would sort of give us a way to this healing.
Yeah, there's many different skills one discovers in meditation. First is that you discover the skill that you can modulate your attention, because the way you feel in a particular moment depends a lot on what you pay attention to. So let's say you have a difficult moment of anxiety and worries, and your attention goes into the thinking, and the worries increase. So in meditation, you develop the skill to notice that first, but you also start to discover, I actually can pay attention to something else. Is these thoughts about a possible future problem, is that actually what I want to pay attention to? Is that actually right now important to me? So you learn about that there is a certain way to modulate your attention to that which is wholesome. Another skill you develop in meditation is the capacity to ground yourself, to find a space of balance, to make a step backward, or like kind of go meta. So you look at your experience, you relax the identification with the content of your experience, so you create some space. And then the way you look at your experience, that's also something which you can modulate. So either you can look at your experience and judge it and resist it, or you can create habits of embracing, of inviting, of saying yes to your experience. So that's different skills you can cultivate in meditation, but not only in meditation. So, or maybe, let's say, not in meditation in the way many people think about, like sitting still in a certain posture, but it is also something one can cultivate and discover more informally.
I have a last question. I think you talk also about the yoga tradition and the yoga practice. And the Kumne yoga, is that different from other kinds of yoga practices that we are familiar with in the Western?
Yes, the Kumne has some of the Hatha yoga postures we know from the West, but it includes massage, breathing, and the emphasis is more on working with the subtle energies in the body. So the emphasis on doing the posture right that's not the point. So it's more a discovery of the subtle movements in your body and how you gently, through movement, breath, and touch, can open or relax and heal the body.
It sounds like real connection with the body.
Yeah. I mean, you can practice yoga or fitness in a kind of harsh way, like treating the body as a donkey. No, it needs to be fit, it needs to look nice, it needs to be flexible, and it's not necessary that yoga practice really brings you deeper into the body. It can be practiced more like as a fitness, which has its benefits, but the work with Kumne is more subtle.
I once made an interview with a veteran from the U.S. Army. He had been in Iraq for 18 months or something, and it was like 24 years. And he had an experience that was in a research program with in US and in Wisconsin. And this week of yoga sort of made him free from that trauma he came home with. So he wanted to be interviewed if, of course, he wanted to spread this. But it's hard to understand that it's possible by a lot of breathing. I think it was Kundalini, or maybe I don't remember exactly what kind, but it was a lot of breathing experiences, and it all went. And there were a lot of veterans in that research program, but still something happened, and you would understand that, wouldn't you? That it's possible.
I would understand it, but of course, that's like a very powerful and specific boom experience, and that can happen because everything within the body, within the mind, can change, can shift very quickly. But I wouldn't take a story like that as a general. It would be, I think, not so good to generalize it, because for most people it's really a long path. But there is moments which you can call moments of awakening, and when a person is ready for that, of course, incredible things can happen, which from the Western point of view would be recognized maybe as miracles. But for many people, it's a lifetime journey towards wholeness, which in one sense is already here, it's already available. On the other hand, for most of us, it is a longer journey of healing.
But could you still talk about it's some kind of transformation? Is it like talk about the power of transformation? Could you say something about what you would say about that possibility we have of transformation? The feelings that would transform naturally?
Yeah, it seems that this word loving witnessing, loving awareness, the loving gaze, sometimes I use that word, that is that leads into transformation. Because it seems that everything in us, also the wounds, the traumas, there is a movement towards wholeness. There is a movement towards healing, if these energies are met with love, with loving space. And I don't know, I can't explain it, how that happens, but we all know how healing it is to meet kindness, for example. We have a bad day, we struggle, and then we meet a person who is kind and loving and gives us a hug, and this is like, yeah. And then if we would think about meeting the love and kindness or the touch of His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Jesus, yeah, it's just my experience and the experience of many other people. But why that is or how, I don't know. It just works. Yeah. And one can easily test that. For example, with a difficult feeling, one can make a little test. So how would it be if I would say, oh, I don't want to feel like that, it's too difficult, I'm ashamed that I feel like that. And then you see how you feel. And then you say, okay, I have a difficult moment right now. Yeah. Oh, yes, I need some kindness. Yeah, it's fine. I allow you. Yeah. And so immediately something shifts. And we don't need to go to a complete freedom, but I mean a little bit more space, a little bit more relaxation. That's good enough. And that's a little test everyone can do. What's the difference of resisting what is happening, resisting my experience, how it is right now, compared to trying to find a yes. Oh, this is how I feel right now. And there's the proof.
Thank you so much. I think this is just a fine ending of the long conversation. Really nice.
Yes,
to talk to you. Oh, it's been like 40 minutes of heter det education, heter det heter undervisning.
Yeah.
Yeah, teaching. for us, for Camilla and me. And so I would just like to put 3 questions, like when you come to Sweden and the retreat, what is the main focus in that retreat that the participants will meet?
A lot of what we are talking, what we were talking about. So one part is deepening our capacity to be a loving witness to our own processes, and with that also to the processes of others. And then what I'm most interested in to invite people is to have a taste, to have an experience of awareness, of that which is aware. So both, how can I relate to the content of my experience? So that's, how can I change the relationship to my experience so that I suffer less? And then starting to be curious about that which is relating to the content of our experience. So what is that? What is consciousness itself? What is that? What is that capacity of loving awareness? And how can I shift my sense of identity away from our conditioning into that which is aware, into that which is bigger than the little me, the suffering me? So familiarizing ourselves with presence.
Thank you. I think this is great. We bring Camilla into the picture, I think.
Yes.
Yes, a very, very interesting and warming to listen to you, really.
Yeah. I have never been interviewed before, so
okay.
I really knew with this. And yeah, I think there's room for improvement because it's sometimes just difficult for me to come to the conceptual rational. Yeah, so it's fine. It's yeah, but yeah, thank you for your questions and for your attention,
and I could say something just to be listening in the behinds. That you waited to give yourself space to answer. That was good. So you don't need to, I don't think you need to perform in an interview, but you give yourself space to I think that was very valuable.
And if I would write an article, I've been doing these kind of interviews with, Tibetan monks and things. So I sort of know that I can make it, I can make the reader understand what you really mean. The person that maybe talks about not that rational things. So I like that kind of challenge, really. So I will talk to my paper and see if there is any space for an interview with you in June. Then we will remake it before or after of course.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I'm interested in the field. So
yeah, you will be at the retreat.
Yes, I will.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, then we can talk
afterwards or before. I mean,
because
maybe
this question you ask about why is it helpful to connect with the body? I'm dissatisfied with my answers around that. But even now, if you would talk more about it, it's difficult for me to explain, or I lost maybe interest in explaining it.
Yeah,
because it just needs to be the right thing,
Yeah.
and somehow, as I said, also when I talk with people, or when I invite people into this kind of movement, I actually don't get the question, why should I do that? What's the benefit of it? Because it immediately feels right to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, somehow.
I think I'm also very trained in thinking about the people who don't know anything.
Yeah.
And how can I make them understand a little?
Yeah. And then
I think that's not a bad idea, even in this kind of
yeah.
really. I don't think so.
I think that's right. And
yeah.
I think I'm going to contemplate that question a bit, because I think it's think it's right, because of course when I teach in a retreat, that's a completely different situation, because then people do it and they forget the question, why should I do it, or what's the benefit, because they experience the benefit. They experience the relaxation, they experience the spaciousness. But of course, it's also good to explain it, so that someone who is not in a retreat, or who is someone who needs to have some understandable reasons to do it. I think it's good to formulate that in a reasonable way, to make people curious and understand. That's actually.
And I also think it's good to sort of point extra at, it's not a quick fix on trauma, and if you have because that is very important to say, I think, which you did.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to talk to you also about a little bit about the body, because I'm a lot into the body and body awareness and so on. So it'd be really nice to talk about also. Yeah. And I know you mentioned Gentling, and he was one of my first inspirations long ago. So yeah, and he really talked about this, like you said, the felt sense, like patients that went into therapy, if they were connected with their body, they got better results from the therapy than the ones that didn't connect with their bodies.
I mean, that's also when you look into the research on the effectiveness of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
I mean, it clearly shows the limits of pure cognitive therapy.
Yeah.
Particularly for long term.
Yeah. Yeah, very exciting. We're looking forward to.
Yes, really.
Yes. Okay, good. Yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Both of you, actually.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So
we go back to our huts, our nice huts with wooden walls.
Yeah.
It's really wooden walls.
Is it a summer house or?
It's a winter house. We're up in the north going skiing. So we've been skiing, during the days we're skiing.
So you have snow outside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no snow here, but.
Okay. No.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Good.
Yeah, so have a nice evening.
Have a nice evening.
You too.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.